I'm Angie, 27 years old, and I'm telling you this from my hospital bed after my own sister pushed me out of my wheelchair at her engagement party. The marble floor felt cold against my face as guests gasped in horror. My leg brace snapped on impact, sending shooting pain through my recently operated knee. Bethany stood over me screaming, "Stop faking for attention" on MY Day, while I writhed in agony. But the truth about why I was in that wheelchair would destroy her perfect image forever. Before I share what happened, where are you watching from today? Please hit that like button and subscribe if you believe family should protect, not harm each other. Trust me, what comes next will show you just how deep family betrayal can go. 6 months before that horrible night, my life was completely normal. I worked as a graphic designer, lived in my own apartment, and despite our complicated relationship, I still dropped everything when Bethany called. That February evening, she phoned me frantically from the airport. "Angie, you have to pick me up right now. Kyle's planning to propose tonight at the restaurant, and my Uber cancelled. I can't be late for my own proposal." Her voice had that familiar demanding tone that I'd been conditioned to obey since childhood. I grabbed my keys without hesitation, even though it was rush hour and sleeting outside. The drive to the airport usually took 30 minutes, but Bethany kept texting me to hurry up, sending messages like, "If you ruin this for me, I'll never forgive you, and why are you so slow? Can't you drive faster?" I was trying to respond to one of her texts, at a red light, when the light turned green. I put my phone down and proceeded through the intersection, but a drunk driver ran their red light and T-boned my car on the driver's side. The impact was devastating. My left leg took the worst of it, crushed between the door and the center console. I remember screaming, the sound of metal crunching, glass shattering, and then everything went black. When I woke up in the hospital, the doctors explained I had multiple fractures in my leg, torn ligaments, and severe nerve damage. I would need at least 3 surgeries and months of physical therapy. They warned me I might never walk normally again. My parents, Dorothy and Frank, rushed to the hospital immediately. Mom cried, holding my hand, while Dad paced the hallway arguing with insurance companies on the phone. But when Bethany finally showed up the next day, she didn't ask how I was feeling. Instead, she stood at the foot of my bed with her arms crossed. Kyle proposed anyway, at the airport, when I told him what happened. "Thanks for almost ruining the most important night of my life." She flashed her ring at me and complained that the proposal wasn't as romantic as planned, because she'd been crying about my accident. Over the next few weeks, as I underwent my first surgery, my parents' support began to waver. The medical bills were mounting, even with insurance, and they had to take time off work to help with my care. Only my cousin Mackenzie seemed genuinely concerned about my recovery. She visited every day, bringing me books and keeping me company during the long, painful hours. My orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Patel, was honest about my prognosis. "The damage is extensive, Angie. We're looking at a minimum of 12 months before you might walk unassisted. You'll need to use a wheelchair for at least 6 months, then graduate to crutches and eventually a cane. The nerve damage means you'll likely have chronic pain." I tried to stay positive, but when Bethany announced she was planning her wedding for just 8 months away, I felt a knot form in my stomach. Physical therapy was grueling. My therapist, Jamal, noticed that while other patients had family members attending their sessions, I was always alone except for Mackenzie. "Where's your family?" he asked one day as I struggled through exercises. I made excuses, but the truth was they'd stopped coming after the first week. Mom said it was too hard to watch me in pain, Dad claimed work was too busy, and Bethany said hospitals depressed her. 2 months into my recovery, still confined to a wheelchair, and living back at my parents' house, because I couldn't manage my apartment stairs, Bethany burst in with wedding magazines. I've set the date for October 15th. 8 months should be plenty of time for you to get your act together and walk down the aisle as my maid of honor. When I tried to explain that I'd still be in recovery, she rolled her eyes. You're being so dramatic. The doctors said you might walk in a year. Might means you could do it sooner if you actually tried. Moving back into my childhood home was supposed to be temporary, just until I could manage basic tasks independently. But what should have been a time of family support turned into a nightmare of resentment and accusations. My mother Dorothy, who had initially been so caring at the hospital, began complaining constantly about having to help me with daily activities. I'm 55 years old, Angie. I shouldn't be playing nurse to my adult daughter, she'd mutter while grudgingly helping me transfer from bed to wheelchair. The bathroom modifications alone cost $3,000, and Dad made sure I knew it every day. Your insurance better reimburse us for this, he'd say, pointing at the shower rails and raised toilet seat. We were planning to renovate the kitchen, not turn our house into a medical facility. The guilt ate at me, but I had no choice. I couldn't shower, dress, or even get upstairs without help. Things took a darker turn when Bethany started her campaign of lies. I overheard her on the phone with our Aunt Vera one afternoon, not realizing I was in the next room. She was definitely texting while driving, Aunt Vera. I told her to put the phone down so many times, but Angie never listens. Now look what happened. We're all suffering because of her carelessness. My heart shattered. Not only was it a complete lie, but she was the one who had been bombarding me with texts demanding I hurry. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. What does it matter now? The accident happened. Do you want everyone to think you're a victim? I'm trying to help you save face. Her twisted logic made no sense, but soon the entire extended family believed her version. Uncle Robert stopped visiting altogether, and my cousins started declining invitations to help with my care. Mackenzie showed me screenshots from our family group chat that I'd been removed from. The messages were cruel. Cousin Diana wrote, Angie's always been jealous of Bethany. Now she's milking this accident for attention right before the wedding. Another cousin, James, added, my friend saw her at physical therapy laughing with the therapist. Can't be that hurt if she's flirting. During one particularly difficult therapy session, Jamal noticed I was crying. Pain level too high today, he asked gently. I shook my head and admitted what was happening at home. His expression darkened. Angie, I've seen your x-rays and surgical reports. Anyone suggesting you're faking doesn't understand the severity of your injuries. You have metal pins holding your leg together. My best friend Zoe had been traveling for work during the accident, but returned home 3 months later. When she came to visit, she was horrified by what she discovered. Angie, I ran into Bethany at the coffee shop, and she told everyone there that you're exaggerating your injuries, because you can't stand her being the center of attention. She actually said you probably planned the accident timing to interfere with her engagement. The gaslighting was constant. Bethany would move my wheelchair just out of reach when I was on the couch, then act innocent when I struggled. She'd forget to pick up my prescriptions, claiming I should be off pain medication by now anyway. The worst part was when she started planning pre-wedding events at venues with no wheelchair access, then acting surprised when I couldn't attend. The first major confrontation happened during a family dinner. Bethany was describing her bachelorette party plans, a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. When I quietly mentioned I wouldn't be able to go because of accessibility issues, she exploded. Everything has to be about you and your wheelchair. Maybe if you worked harder at therapy instead of feeling sorry for yourself, you'd be walking by now. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Bethany's right. The doctors said 12 months maximum, but you seem content to sit in that chair forever. Are you even trying? Mom nodded in agreement. The physical therapist said you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Maybe you like being waited on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I pulled up my therapy progress reports on my phone, showing them I was actually ahead of schedule in some areas, but they dismissed it. Papers can say anything, Mom said. We see you every day, and you're not improving fast enough. That night, Mackenzie found me sobbing in my room. She held me while I cried out months of frustration. They're abusing you, she said firmly. This isn't normal family behavior. Bethany's turned them all against you, because she can't stand any attention being diverted from her wedding. She started documenting everything, taking photos of my medical records, recording conversations when legal, and keeping a diary of incidents. The situation escalated when Bethany announced I needed to pay her back for the emotional distress of having to change her proposal plans. She actually presented me with an itemized bill for the perfect proposal package Kyle had originally planned, but couldn't execute, because I wasn't there to drive her. The bill was for $1,200 and included dinner reservations, photographer fees, and even the cost of her outfit. When I refused to pay, she turned our parents against me further. She ruined the most important night of my life, and won't even take responsibility, Bethany cried to them. Unbelievably, they took her side. Dad actually suggested I pay her from my insurance settlement, which hadn't even been finalized yet, and was meant to cover my ongoing medical expenses. My surgeon required a second operation when the first pins didn't set correctly, extending my recovery time. Bethany's response was to accuse me of deliberately scheduling it to conflict with her dress shopping appointment. You couldn't stand that I wouldn't be here to hold your hand, so you made sure to have surgery that day, she hissed at me the night before the procedure. The abuse wasn't just emotional anymore. Bethany would accidentally bump into my wheelchair, jolting my healing leg. She'd leave things on the floor for me to trip over when using my walker during therapy exercises at home. Once, she even hid my pain medication, claiming she was worried I was becoming addicted, despite my doctor's assurance that I was taking them appropriately. The family's financial resentment grew worse as medical bills piled up. Even though insurance covered most costs, there were copays, equipment rentals, and transportation to appointments. Dad started leaving printed bills on my bed with passive-aggressive notes. Another $1,000 this month. Hope you're happy. Mom began serving me smaller portions at dinner, saying, since you're not moving around much, you don't need as much food. My breaking point came when I overheard Bethany telling her bridesmaids that she was embarrassed to have a crippled sister in the wedding party. I'm thinking of asking her to just do a reading instead of being maid of honor. Can you imagine the photos with her wheelchair? It'll ruin the aesthetic. The casual cruelty of reducing my worth to how I'd look in her wedding album was devastating. Mackenzie and Zoe became my lifelines, creating a schedule to ensure I was never alone with Bethany for too long. They documented her behavior and encouraged me to speak with a social worker at the hospital about the abuse. But I kept hoping my family would come to their senses, that they'd remember I was hurt through no fault of my own while trying to help Bethany. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was injured while rushing to help my sister, and now she was leading the charge to paint me as the family burden. Every day brought new humiliations, new accusations, and new ways for them to express their resentment at my existence in their lives. As Bethany's October wedding approached, I knew something had to give. I just never imagined how explosive it would become. 2 weeks before Bethany's engagement party, she cornered me in the living room where I was doing my prescribed leg exercises. You have to come to my engagement party, she announced, not asked. Kyle's entire family will be there, and it would look weird if my own sister didn't attend. I carefully set down my resistance band and looked up at her from my wheelchair. Bethany, I want to be there, but the venue has stairs, and you know I'm still in the wheelchair. Is there wheelchair access? She waved dismissively at my concerns. Of course there are ramps. It's 2024, everywhere has to be accessible. Stop making excuses. Her tone suggested this conversation was over, but I pressed on. Can you double-check? The Grand Pemberton Estates website doesn't mention accessibility features. Her face darkened. Are you calling me a liar? I said they have ramps. You're coming. End of discussion. Over the next few days, Bethany's demands intensified. She insisted I wear a specific color to match her theme, powder blue, which meant finding a formal dress that would work with my wheelchair and leg brace. She texted me links to dresses, all of them requiring standing to look appropriate. When I suggested a nice blouse and skirt combination that would be more practical, she accused me of trying to dress down her event. The real agenda became clear when she sat me down for what she called party rules. Kyle's family owns several businesses in the city. They are very image-conscious. I need you to be normal for one night. I stared at her in disbelief. Normal? I'm in a wheelchair, Bethany. That's my current normal. She leaned forward, her engagement ring catching the light as she gestured. You know what I mean. Don't talk about the accident, don't mention your surgeries, don't complain about pain. If anyone asks, just say you had a minor injury and you'll be fine soon. She continued listing demands. Don't let anyone help you too obviously. I don't want guests feeling uncomfortable or thinking they need to assist you. Park your wheelchair somewhere discreet when you're not moving around. And absolutely do not take any pain medication at the party. I don't want you seeming drugged. Each rule felt like another weight on my chest. She was asking me to hide my reality to protect her image. Cousin Mackenzie overheard the conversation and pulled me aside later. This is insane, Angie. She's asking you to pretend you're not disabled for her convenience. But when I tried to explain how unreasonable the demands were to my parents, Mom sided with Bethany. It's one night, Angie. Can't you just try to blend in? This is important for Bethany's future with Kyle's family. The week leading up to the party was a nightmare of preparation. Bethany insisted on approving my outfit, rejecting 5 different options before settling on a dress that would be incredibly difficult to manage in a wheelchair. She even dictated how I should style my hair to draw attention away from the chair. When I mentioned I'd need to leave early if my pain levels increased, she threatened to uninvite me entirely. Kyle's family, the Prestons, were indeed wealthy and influential. His father owned a chain of high-end restaurants, and his mother was on the boards of several charities. Bethany was desperate to impress them, and apparently, my wheelchair didn't fit the image she wanted to project. She actually asked if I could practice sitting normally, so my leg brace wouldn't be visible. 3 days before the party, I called the venue myself. The event coordinator confirmed what I feared. While the Grand Pemberton estate had a small ramp at the service entrance, the main ballroom where the party would be held was up a flight of marble stairs with no elevator access. When I confronted Bethany with this information, she shrugged. So we'll have someone help you up the stairs. Stop being so dramatic about everything. The night before the party, Bethany came to my room with makeup samples. I hired a makeup artist, but she'll be focused on me. You'll need to do your own, but make sure you look good. Not sick or tired. Use extra concealer if you need to. She scrutinized my face. You've gained weight from sitting around. Try to minimize that with contouring. The cruel comments about my appearance, when I was struggling just to exist in my injured body, cut deep. On the morning of the party, I woke up to increased pain in my leg. The weather was changing, which always aggravated my injuries. I took my prescribed pain medication and began the long process of getting ready. The dress Bethany had chosen required help to put on properly, but she was too busy with her own preparations to assist. Mackenzie came over early to help, bringing a shawl to cover my shoulders since the dress was sleeveless and my arm muscles had weakened from using the wheelchair. As Mackenzie helped me dress, she documented everything with photos. "Just in case," she said grimly. She was worried about the party, especially after learning about the stairs. "I'll stay close to you all evening," she promised. "If you need to leave, we leave, no matter what Bethany says." Her support was the only thing giving me the courage to attend. The drive to the venue was tense. Dad complained about having to fold my wheelchair into the trunk of his car. "These things are so cumbersome," he muttered. Mom spent the ride reminding me of Bethany's rules. "Remember, minimal discussion of your condition. These are important people." I sat in the back seat, my leg already aching, wondering why I was putting myself through this. When we arrived at the Grand Pemberton estate, the problems began immediately. The accessible parking was on the far side of the building, nowhere near the main entrance where guests were arriving. Dad refused to drop me off first, saying it would take too long to park and come back. So I had to wheel myself across uneven gravel in my formal dress, my arms burning with the effort. The entrance was exactly as I'd feared. A grand staircase led up to the ballroom with no ramp in sight. Guests in elegant attire streamed past us, some staring openly at my wheelchair. Bethany appeared at the top of the stairs in a stunning white dress, her face immediately contorting with anger when she saw me at the bottom. "Why are you making a scene down there?" she called out. Kyle appeared beside her, looking confused. This was the first time I'd seen him since the accident, and his eyes widened at the sight of my wheelchair. Apparently, Bethany hadn't told him the full extent of my injuries. It took 3 of my male cousins to carry me up the stairs while Mackenzie managed the wheelchair. The spectacle of being lifted like luggage while guests watched was humiliating. Bethany stood at the top, tapping her foot impatiently, not offering any help or comfort. Once deposited at the top, I heard her whisper to Kyle, "She's being more dramatic than necessary. The chair is mostly for sympathy." The ballroom was beautiful, but completely impractical for wheelchair navigation. Round tables were placed close together with narrow paths between them. The dance floor took up a large portion of the space, and the bathroom was down a hallway with a door too narrow for my wheelchair to fit through comfortably. Bethany had placed me at a table in the back corner, claiming it was easier for access, but it actually isolated me from most of the party. As guests arrived, I watched Bethany greet them with air kisses and practiced smiles. Several people asked about me, and I could hear her minimizing my condition. "Oh, Angie had a little fender bender. She'll be up and about soon. You know how she likes attention." The lies rolled off her tongue so easily while I sat trapped in the corner, unable to correct the narrative without causing the scene she'd forbidden. Kyle's mother, Constance Preston, approached my table with genuine concern. "Dear, Bethany mentioned you'd had an accident, but I had no idea it was this serious. Are you comfortable? Do you need anything?" Before I could respond, Bethany materialized beside her future mother-in-law. "Mother Preston, Angie's fine. Let me show you the cake design we chose." She effectively steered the woman away from me. The party progressed with speeches, toasts, and celebration while I struggled in my corner. The pain in my leg was increasing from the awkward position I had to maintain. When I tried to shift to relieve pressure, my wheelchair bumped the table, causing glasses to wobble. A cousin muttered, "Watch it," as if I'd done it on purpose. I couldn't reach the appetizers being passed around, and no one thought to bring any to me. About an hour into the party, I desperately needed the bathroom. Mackenzie had stepped away to take a phone call, and I faced the choice of either asking for help or trying to navigate alone. Knowing Bethany would be furious if I made a fuss, I attempted to wheel myself through the narrow pathways between tables. Guests had to move chairs and shift positions to let me pass, each movement drawing more attention. I'd made it halfway across the room when Bethany intercepted me, her smile fixed, but her eyes blazing. "Where are you going?" she asked through clenched teeth. "The bathroom," I whispered, hoping not to draw more attention. "Can't you wait? I'm about to do the toast." Her complete lack of empathy for basic human needs was staggering, but it was about to get so much worse. The stage was set for disaster. A room full of elegant guests, a bride-to-be desperate to maintain her image, and a sister in a wheelchair who represented everything that threatened that perfect picture. The pain in my leg was building, my humiliation was complete, and Bethany's anger was reaching a boiling point. The confrontation that would change everything was moments away. The moment I insisted I really needed the bathroom, Bethany's facade cracked. "Fine," she hissed, gripping my wheelchair handles. "Let me help you so we can do this quickly." But instead of pushing me toward the bathroom, she steered me toward a corner near the gift table, away from most guests. "We need to talk," she said, her knuckles white as she gripped the handles. "Bethany, I really need to use the bathroom," I pleaded, the urgency becoming painful. She positioned herself in front of me, blocking my view of the room. "You've been sabotaging my party all night." Sitting there in that corner looking pathetic, making everyone uncomfortable. "Kyle's mother keeps asking about you instead of focusing on our engagement." I tried to remain calm despite my physical discomfort. "You put me in that corner. I've been trying not to draw attention, just like you asked." My reasonable response only enraged her further. "Stop playing the victim, Angie. You love this, don't you?" Poor little Angie in her wheelchair, while I'm trying to celebrate my engagement. The pain in my bladder was becoming unbearable, and I attempted to wheel myself around her. She grabbed the wheels, stopping me. "We're not done talking. You scheduled your surgery to conflict with my dress shopping. You make sure to look extra pitiful whenever Kyle's family is around. You're trying to ruin my relationship." "Bethany, that's insane," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I was picking you up from the airport when the accident happened. I've been nothing but supportive of your engagement despite everything I'm going through." Several guests were starting to notice our heated exchange. Kyle detached himself from a group of his groomsmen and headed our way. "Supportive?" Bethany's voice grew louder. "You call sitting in that wheelchair like a constant reminder of drama being supportive? You could walk if you wanted to. The doctors said 12 months maximum, and you're milking it." I felt tears of frustration building. "I have metal pins in my leg, Bethany. I just had surgery 2 weeks ago. This isn't something I'm choosing." Kyle reached us, placing a hand on Bethany's shoulder. "Hey, what's going on? People are staring." Bethany's switch was instantaneous. "Oh, honey, Angie's just upset about missing the bathroom. You know how emotional she gets." The gaslighting in front of her fiancé made my stomach turn. "That's not what's happening," I said firmly. "Bethany won't let me go to the bathroom, and is accusing me of faking my injuries." Kyle looked between us, confusion evident on his face. "Faking? Bethany, she's in a wheelchair." For a moment, I thought he might be an ally, but Bethany's manipulation ran deep. She exaggerates everything, Kyle. The doctors said she could be walking by now if she tried harder. She's choosing to stay in that chair for attention. More guests were gathering, drawn by Bethany's escalating volume. Mackenzie appeared at the edge of the crowd, her phone in her hand. "What's happening?" she called out, trying to push through the gathering crowd. Bethany pointed at her. "See? She even has her little support crew here to document everything, probably for some lawsuit." "I don't want money," I said, my voice breaking. "I just want to use the bathroom and then leave. Please, Bethany, just let me go." But she was beyond reason now, her perfect party disrupted, her image threatened. "You want to leave? Let me help you with that," she snarled, grabbing my wheelchair handles again. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Bethany began shaking my wheelchair violently, rattling me back and forth. "Get up," she screamed. "Show everyone you can walk. Stop faking." My leg brace, already stressed from the day's activities, creaked ominously. "Bethany, stop. Please. My leg." I gripped the armrests, terrified. Kyle tried to intervene. "Bethany, what are you doing? Stop." But she shoved him away with one hand while continuing to shake my chair with the other. "I'm proving she's a liar. Get up, Angie. Walk. I know you can do it." The crowd gasped as she grew more violent, my body being jolted painfully with each shake. Then I heard the crack. My leg brace, weakened from the earlier fall during physical therapy that week, snapped at a crucial joint. The sudden shift in support sent agony through my barely healed surgical site. I screamed, a sound that cut through the party noise like a knife. "My brace. Bethany, my brace broke. Stop." But she was beyond hearing, beyond caring. In her fury, convinced I was faking even my scream of pain, she did the unthinkable. "You want attention? Fine." She tipped my wheelchair forward with all her strength. I had no way to catch myself, my hands trapped trying to hold my injured leg stable. I fell face first onto the marble floor, my dress tearing, my leg twisting at an unnatural angle. The impact was brutal. My face hit the cold marble, and I tasted blood immediately. But worse was my leg. The broken brace had allowed it to bend in a way it shouldn't, and I felt something tear inside, a white-hot pain that made my vision go black at the edges. I couldn't even scream anymore, just gasping, choking sounds as I writhed on the floor. For a moment, the entire ballroom was silent, frozen in shock. Then Bethany's voice cut through, still raging. "Get up. Stop faking. You're ruining my engagement party with your drama." She stood over me, her white dress pristine while I lay broken and bleeding on the floor, and continued her tirade. "This is what you wanted, isn't it? Everyone looking at you instead of me." Mackenzie broke through the crowd, dropping to her knees beside me. "Call an ambulance," she screamed. "Someone call an ambulance now." She cradled my head, trying to keep me still. I was dimly aware of the crowd's reaction, some people pulling out phones, whether to call for help or record the scene, I couldn't tell. Kyle stood frozen, staring at his fiancée, as if seeing her for the first time. "Bethany, what have you done?" he whispered. She turned on him, her face twisted with rage. "She's faking. Can't you see? She planned this whole thing to ruin our party." Even as blood pooled under my face from where I'd bitten through my lip, even as my leg lay at an impossible angle, she maintained I was acting. Constance Preston pushed through the crowd, her elegant composure shattered. "Someone get towels. Apply pressure to her face. Don't move her leg." She knelt beside Mackenzie, her expensive dress immediately stained with my blood. "You poor dear, don't move. Help is coming." Her kindness in that moment of agony meant everything. But Bethany wasn't done. As sirens wailed in the distance, she tried to control the narrative. "She's been faking this whole time. Ask anyone in my family. She's jealous of my engagement, my wedding. She probably loosened her own brace to make this happen." The fact that she was blaming me while I lay bleeding and broken on the floor of her party was beyond comprehension. Uncle Robert, who had believed Bethany's lies for months, stood pale and shaking. "Bethany, stop. Just stop. Can't you see what you've done?" The reality of the violence was too much to deny, even for those who'd been convinced I was exaggerating my injuries. Aunt Vera was crying, whether from shock or guilt, I couldn't tell. My parents finally pushed through the crowd. Dad's face went white when he saw me on the floor. "Angie. Oh my God, Angie." Mom stood frozen, her hand over her mouth, unable to process the scene. Neither moved to comfort me, their shock paralyzing them while strangers tended to their injured daughter. The EMTs arrived, immediately assessing the situation. One of them looked at my twisted leg and spoke urgently into his radio. "We need immediate transport. Possible refracture of previous surgical site, facial trauma, potential spinal involvement from the fall. Patient is conscious, but in severe distress." As they carefully moved me onto a backboard, I heard one EMT mutter to another, "This is assault. Police will need to be called." Bethany, overhearing, began a fresh round of protests. "Assault. She fell. It was an accident. She's clumsy in that wheelchair." But too many people had seen what really happened. Mackenzie held my hand as they prepared to lift me. "I recorded it," she whispered. "I got the whole thing on video. She's not getting away with this." Through my pain and shock, I felt a small spark of validation. Finally, there would be proof that I wasn't the one creating drama. As they wheeled me toward the ambulance, I caught a glimpse of the party's aftermath. Guests stood in shocked clusters, some crying, others arguing. Kyle stood apart from Bethany, his face a mask of horror and disgust. The perfect engagement party had become a crime scene, and the truth about my sister's cruelty was finally, undeniably exposed. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was Bethany, still in her white dress, still trying to convince anyone who would listen that I had orchestrated my own assault. Even faced with the consequences of her violence, she couldn't stop playing the victim. But this time, no one was buying her lies. The ambulance ride was a blur of pain and medical jargon. The EMTs worked to stabilize my leg while monitoring my head injury from the fall. At the hospital, I was rushed into emergency surgery. The damage was worse than anyone anticipated. My barely healed bones had indeed refractured, and the surgical site had torn open. The metal pins had shifted, one dangerously close to severing a major nerve. Dr. Patel, who'd performed my original surgeries, looked grim as he explained I'd need immediate intervention to prevent permanent paralysis. While I was in surgery, Mackenzie was busy ensuring justice wouldn't be denied this time. She uploaded the video to multiple platforms with the title "Bride-to-be pushes disabled sister from wheelchair at engagement party." She'd captured everything, from Bethany violently shaking my chair to her standing over my broken body insisting I was faking. The video spread like wildfire. I woke up 12 hours later to find my leg in a complex external fixation device. Dr. Patel explained, they'd had to completely redo the reconstruction, and I'd now need at least 3 more surgeries. The healing time had extended by a minimum of 6 months, and there was now a significant chance I'd have permanent mobility issues. The fall had also caused a severe concussion, leaving me with splitting headaches and vision problems. My room was quiet except for Mackenzie, who'd refused to leave my side. Your parents came by, she said carefully. I told them you weren't ready for visitors. I was grateful for her protection. The betrayal cut too deep to face them yet. She showed me her phone, where the video had already garnered hundreds of thousands of views. The comments were overwhelming, people expressing outrage and disbelief at Bethany's cruelty. The next visitor surprised me. Kyle arrived alone, his face haggard. Angie, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Bethany told me you'd been exaggerating your injuries for attention. She said the wheelchair was mostly psychological. He sat down heavily. I've been replaying every conversation about you, and I realize now it was all lies. She even told me you'd been drinking the night of your accident. He revealed more disturbing truths. Bethany had been telling his family that I was mentally unstable, that the family was considering involuntary commitment, because I'd become obsessed with ruining her happiness. She showed me fake text messages, Angie. Screenshots where you supposedly threatened to ruin our wedding. I should have known they were fabricated. The language didn't even sound like you. I broke off the engagement last night, Kyle continued. Not just because of what she did to you, though that was horrific enough. But watching her try to spin it afterwards, seeing her complete lack of remorse. I realized I was about to marry someone capable of incredible cruelty. He left a box on my bedside table. These are the fake messages and other things she created about you. I thought you might need them. The next few days brought a parade of revelations. The video had reached local news outlets. Local woman assaulted by sister at engagement party became the headline that destroyed Bethany's carefully crafted image. Reporters had done their homework, pulling up the police report from my original accident that clearly showed I was the victim of a drunk driver, not at fault in any way. My parents finally arrived, having been turned away by hospital security twice at my request. When I finally agreed to see them, they looked smaller somehow, diminished. We saw the video, Mom said, tears streaming. Angie, we're so sorry. We believed her lies. We failed you. Dad couldn't even look at me. The medical bills, the complaints. God, what kind of parents were we? Their remorse felt hollow after months of abuse and neglect. You watched me struggle every day, I said, my voice hoarse. You saw my surgical scars, my x-rays, my pain, and you chose to believe I was faking. You let her convince you that your injured daughter was the problem. The conversation was painful but necessary. They'd have to live with their choices. The legal machinery began turning when 2 nurses reported the assault. The hospital was required to involve police in cases of obvious violence. Detective Morrison, a serious woman with kind eyes, took my statement. The video evidence is damning, she said. Multiple witnesses have come forward. This is clear assault causing bodily harm, possibly aggravated assault given your pre-existing condition. Bethany was arrested at our parents' house the next morning. The news cameras caught her being led away in handcuffs, still protesting her innocence. Her mugshot showed a woman whose perfect facade had finally cracked, her expression one of fury rather than remorse. She was charged with assault causing bodily harm, and criminal negligence causing bodily harm. The prosecutor, Janet Williams, visited me to discuss the case. The video makes this straightforward, but I want you to know what to expect. Your sister's lawyer will likely try to claim emotional distress, or temporary insanity. They might bring up your family dynamics, trying to paint her as the real victim. Are you prepared for that? Mackenzie had been busy gathering evidence. She'd saved screenshots of the family group chat messages, documented every instance of abuse, and even found witnesses from my physical therapy who could testify about my legitimate injuries. Jamal, my physical therapist, provided detailed reports showing I'd actually been exceeding expected recovery milestones before the assault. The story evolved when an investigative journalist discovered more disturbing facts. Bethany had taken out a wedding insurance policy that included a clause about family emergencies, preventing key participants from attending. If I'd been hospitalized before her wedding, she would have received a payout. The implications were chilling. My extended family began reaching out, their guilt palpable. Aunt Vera visited, bringing flowers and tearful apologies. We believed her because she was so convincing. She had an answer for everything, a reason why you were lying. I'm so ashamed. Uncle Robert couldn't face me, but sent a letter acknowledging his failure and offering to testify about Bethany's pattern of lies. The workplace fallout was swift. Bethany's marketing firm, already dealing with negative publicity from the viral video, discovered she'd been using company resources to create the fake screenshots and documents about me. She was terminated for gross misconduct, with her boss later testifying that they'd found evidence of her manipulating client social media accounts for personal vendettas. Kyle's family stepped up in unexpected ways. Constance Preston visited regularly, bringing homemade soup and sitting with me during the worst pain days. I've seen my share of difficult people in business, she said, but your sister's pathology is something else. The way she convinced everyone you were the problem while you suffered, it's unconscionable. The Preston family lawyer sent Bethany a cease and desist letter regarding the wedding deposits and arrangements. They also sued for the emotional distress caused to their family and guests at the party. The engagement ring, worth $30,000, was to be returned immediately. Bethany tried to claim it was a gift, but Kyle had wisely kept documentation that it was conditional on marriage. Social media became both a blessing and a curse. While the support was overwhelming, with many sharing their own stories of family abuse, some trolls defended Bethany, or accused me of ruining her life over sibling rivalry. Mackenzie managed my accounts, filtering out the worst while sharing updates on my recovery and legal proceedings. The medical evidence was damning. My new injuries were extensively documented, with before and after X-rays showing the additional damage. The external fixation device I now wore was far more complex than my original treatment would have required. Dr. Patel's testimony would be crucial, explaining how the assault had taken me from an expected full recovery to potentially permanent disability. Bethany tried to contact me through our parents, sending letters that vacillated between fake apologies and accusations. One particularly disturbing message claimed I'd won and asked if I was happy now that her life was ruined. The complete lack of accountability, even facing criminal charges, showed her true nature. My friends rallied around me in ways my family never had. Zoe organized a meal train, so I'd have proper nutrition during recovery. Mackenzie's family offered their guest room for when I was discharged, knowing I couldn't return to my parents' house. Even strangers who'd seen the video sent cards and support. The truth had been revealed in the most public, undeniable way possible. The sister who'd painted me as an attention-seeking faker was exposed as a violent abuser. The family who'd believed her lies was forced to confront their complicity. And I, despite lying in a hospital bed with reconstructed bones and an uncertain future, finally had what I'd been denied for months: validation that my pain was real and my suffering was not self-inflicted. The legal proceedings began 3 months after the assault, delayed by my additional surgeries and recovery. Bethany's arrest had made local headlines, but the viral nature of the video meant the case attracted significant attention. The courthouse was packed on the first day of preliminary hearings, with reporters stationed outside and victims' rights advocates showing support. Bethany arrived in a conservative suit, her hair pulled back, trying to project an image of respectability. Her lawyer, David Chen, was known for defending difficult clients and immediately tried to paint her as a victim of stress. The prosecution, led by Janet Williams, came prepared with overwhelming evidence. The video was played in court, and even though I'd lived through it, watching it again was traumatic. The judge's expression hardened as he watched Bethany violently shake my wheelchair before pushing me out. Her voice screaming "Stop faking," while I lay bleeding was chilling. Several people in the gallery gasped, even though many had seen it online. Witness testimony was powerful. Mackenzie took the stand first, detailing the months of abuse leading up to the assault. She'd kept meticulous records, presenting text messages, photos of my injuries being aggravated by Bethany's accidents, and documentation of the lies spread to family members. Her testimony painted a picture of systematic abuse, not a momentary lapse. Kyle's testimony was particularly damaging to Bethany's defense. He revealed the extent of her deception, showing the fake screenshots she'd created and explaining how she'd manipulated him into believing I was mentally unstable. She had me convinced Angie was dangerous, he testified. She said Angie had threatened to show up at our wedding in a wheelchair, just to ruin the photos, that she was obsessed with stealing attention. The medical testimony was brutal. Dr. Patel explained in detail how the assault had undone months of healing and added years to my recovery. He showed the court before and after X-rays, pointing out the additional fractures and explaining the nerve damage. Miss Angie may never walk without assistive devices, he stated. The assault caused permanent damage that no amount of surgery can fully repair. Jamal, my physical therapist, testified about my dedication to recovery before the assault. He brought charts showing my progress, proving I was actually ahead of schedule in many areas. The idea that she was faking or exaggerating is medically impossible, he said firmly. I've seen her X-rays, worked with her through incredible pain. No one could fake that level of injury. The defense tried various tactics. They brought in a psychologist who testified about wedding stress and family dynamics, trying to suggest Bethany had snapped under pressure. They tried to introduce my supposed jealousy as a mitigating factor. But the prosecution countered with Bethany's pattern of behavior, the premeditation shown in spreading lies for months before the assault. The most shocking revelation came when the prosecution presented evidence of the wedding insurance policy. An insurance investigator testified that the policy Bethany had taken out included unusual clauses about family members being unable to attend. If I had been hospitalized before the wedding, she would have received $50,000. The implications sent murmurs through the courtroom. Bethany took the stand in her own defense, and it was a disaster. She couldn't maintain her composure, alternating between fake tears and angry outbursts. When shown the video, she insisted I was exaggerating my fall. When asked about the insurance policy, she claimed it was standard wedding planning. Her lack of remorse was evident, and she actually said, Angie got what she wanted, everyone feeling sorry for her. Character witnesses for the prosecution included several family members who'd finally seen the truth. Aunt Vera tearfully testified about believing Bethany's lies and the guilt she felt seeing the video. Even my parents testified, admitting they'd failed to protect me from Bethany's escalating abuse. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Guilty on all charges. Assault causing bodily harm, criminal negligence, and aggravated assault due to my vulnerable state. The judge's sentencing remarks were scathing. Miss Bethany shown a complete lack of remorse and an inability to accept responsibility. The assault on her disabled sister was cruel, premeditated by months of psychological abuse, and could have resulted in permanent paralysis or death. Bethany was sentenced to 18 months in jail, with 6 months to be served continuously and the remainder on weekends to allow her to work and pay restitution. She was also given 3 years of probation, ordered to undergo psychological evaluation and anger management, and to have no contact with me. The restitution included all my medical expenses, therapy costs, and pain and suffering. The day she was taken into custody was surreal. She screamed at me across the courtroom, "You've ruined my life. I hope you're happy." The complete inability to accept responsibility, even after being convicted, showed she'd learned nothing. My parents looked broken, finally understanding the monster they'd enabled. The civil lawsuit proceeded separately. With the criminal conviction, the case was straightforward. My lawyer pursued damages for the extended medical treatment, lost wages from being unable to work, and the permanent disability I now face. The settlement was substantial, enough to cover my ongoing care and adapt my life to my new limitations. The social consequences for Bethany were severe. The marketing firm not only fired her but sued her for damaging their reputation. She became virtually unemployable in her field, with the viral video following her everywhere. Kyle's family's lawsuit was settled out of court, but rumors suggested she had to liquidate her savings and sell her car to pay them. Our extended family fractured. Some relatives who'd enabled Bethany's behavior for years couldn't face their guilt and distanced themselves entirely. Others, like Mackenzie's immediate family, became my true support system. The family that had once revolved around Bethany's demands reorganized around truth and accountability. My parents struggled with the aftermath. They entered therapy to understand how they'd become enablers of abuse. Dad sold some investments to help with my care beyond what the settlement covered. Mom volunteered with a domestic violence organization, trying to atone for not recognizing the abuse in her own home. Their relationship with me remained strained, but slowly improving. The viral nature of the case had unexpected positive outcomes. I was contacted by disability rights organizations, who used my story to highlight the abuse faced by disabled individuals, often from their own families. Speaking engagements at conferences, though difficult with my mobility limitations, allowed me to turn trauma into advocacy. A support group formed online for people who'd experienced similar family abuse around their disabilities. The community that grew from my worst moment became a source of strength for many. We shared resources, legal advice, and most importantly, validation that our pain was real and our need for accommodation wasn't attention-seeking. The workplace protections improved too. My story led several companies to review their policies on disability accommodation and family medical leave. The idea that someone could be abused for being injured while helping a family member resonated widely, leading to conversations about toxic family dynamics and the pressure to minimize legitimate injuries. 6 months into Bethany's sentence, she tried to break the no-contact order by having a friend deliver a letter. It was full of blame and self-pity, claiming I'd destroyed her chance at happiness. The violation added 3 months to her sentence and extended her probation. She simply couldn't accept that her actions had consequences. The Preston family remained supportive throughout. Constance sponsored an accessibility upgrade at the Grand Pemberton estate, ensuring no one would ever have to be carried up those stairs again. She also funded a scholarship for students with disabilities pursuing marketing degrees, turning Bethany's professional field into an opportunity for those she'd scorned. As the legal battles concluded, I faced the reality of my new life. The external fixation device had been replaced with a more permanent brace, but I'd always need mobility aids. The girl who once rushed to pick up her sister from the airport now measured distances in terms of wheelchair accessibility and pain management. But justice had been served. The truth was documented in court records and video evidence. Bethany's lies were exposed, her cruelty punished, and her victims validated. The family that had enabled her faced their complicity. And I, despite bearing permanent scars from her violence, had found my voice and my strength in standing up to abuse. 1 year after the assault, I finally took my first steps with a specialized walking frame. The moment was bittersweet, filmed by Mackenzie in the adaptive fitness studio I now called my second home. My left leg would never fully bear weight again, and I'd need mobility aids for life, but I was moving forward, literally and figuratively. The journey to this point had been grueling. After Bethany's conviction, I'd moved in with Mackenzie's family, unable to return to the home where I'd been gaslit and abused. They converted their first-floor den into an accessible bedroom, installing grab bars and ramps without a single complaint. The contrast to my own family's resentment was stark. Physical therapy had evolved from medical necessity to passion project. Jamal introduced me to adaptive sports, and I discovered wheelchair basketball. The first time I made a basket, I cried, not from pain, but from joy at what my body could still do. The team became another chosen family, people who understood that disability didn't mean inability. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. They attended family therapy sessions with me monthly, working through the dynamics that had allowed Bethany's abuse to flourish. Mom's volunteer work with domestic violence survivors seemed genuine, and she'd become an advocate for believing victims. Dad struggled more, the shame of choosing his abusive daughter over his injured one eating at him. The online support group I'd started had grown to thousands of members worldwide. We called it Rolling Forward, and it became a resource for people facing family abuse around their disabilities. Weekly video chats, resource sharing, and most importantly, validation that our experiences were real and deserving of respect. The community that grew from my trauma became one of my greatest achievements. Speaking engagements increased as my story gained traction in disability rights circles. Universities invited me to discuss the intersection of family violence and disability discrimination. Corporate diversity departments hired me to consult on creating truly inclusive environments. Each talk was exhausting but fulfilling, turning my worst experience into education for others. 6 months into my new life, I met Jordan at a conference on adaptive technology. He was demonstrating new mobility devices, and his approach was refreshingly practical. Unlike others who spoke to me with pity or excessive admiration, Jordan treated me as an equal, discussing the engineering behind the devices and asking my opinion as an actual user. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and understanding. Jordan had his own invisible disability, managing chronic pain from a genetic condition. He understood the daily calculations of energy expenditure, the frustration of being questioned about good days, and the importance of boundaries with family. Our first date was at an accessible restaurant he'd researched thoroughly, checking not just for ramps, but table heights and bathroom accessibility. Bethany completed her jail sentence, but violated probation twice by attempting contact through third parties. Each violation extended her legal troubles, but more importantly, showed her complete inability to accept responsibility. The family members who still spoke to both of us reported she lived with our parents, working retail, and blaming me for her circumstances. The golden child had tarnished beyond repair. The financial settlement allowed me to pursue adaptive fitness certification. With Jordan's encouragement and Jamal's mentoring, I opened Adaptive Motion, a fitness studio specifically designed for people with mobility challenges. Every detail was considered, from adjustable equipment to wide pathways to staff trained in various disabilities. The grand opening was emotional, attended by my support group members, legal team, and chosen family. Kyle Preston attended the opening with his new fiancée, a pediatric nurse who understood his past. He'd testified at Bethany's probation violations, and become an advocate for recognizing manipulation in relationships. His family's continued support included funding scholarships at Adaptive Motion for those who couldn't afford membership. The moment that showed how far I'd come happened during a busy Saturday class. A new member, recently injured in an accident, broke down crying, saying her family kept insisting she was being dramatic about her pain. Without hesitation, the entire class surrounded her with support, sharing their own stories. I realized we'd created more than a fitness studio, we'd built a sanctuary where pain was believed and limitations were respected. My story appeared in a documentary about family violence against disabled individuals. Watching myself on screen, from the hospital bed, after the assault to leading a fitness class, was surreal. The documentary won awards and, more importantly, led to policy changes in several states regarding assault charges when victims have disabilities. Zoe, my best friend who'd supported me throughout, became Adaptive Motion's business manager. She handled the administrative side, while I focused on programming and client support. Mackenzie taught self-defense classes adapted for wheelchair users. The friend who documented my abuse now helped others protect themselves. The one-year anniversary of the studio coincided with my 30th birthday. The celebration was everything Bethany's engagement party wasn't: inclusive, joyful, and centered on community rather than image. My parents attended, sitting quietly in the back, finally seeing me not as their broken daughter, but as someone who'd rebuilt herself stronger. Jordan proposed during that celebration, not with a flashy display, but with a quiet moment between classes. His proposal included promises to always believe my pain, never question my needs, and face whatever mobility changes might come together. The engagement ring was modest, the opposite of Bethany's flashy diamond, but it represented real partnership. As I write this, teaching certification courses for adaptive fitness instructors across the country, I reflect on the journey. The sister who pushed me from my wheelchair gave me the push I needed to leave a toxic family dynamic. The assault that broke my body freed me from the psychological prison of seeking approval from people who saw my disability as an inconvenience. Bethany remains stuck in her narrative of victimhood, last I heard still living with our parents and working minimum wage jobs. She aged out of her marketing career and social circle, the viral video following her everywhere. Meanwhile, I built a career from my wheelchair, found love that sees me whole, and created a community where disability is not a burden, but simply another way of moving through the world. My leg still hurts every day. I'll never run again, never walk without aids, never be the physically capable person I was before that accident. But I've gained so much more. Self-respect, true family in the form of chosen bonds, a purpose that helps others, and the knowledge that I survived not just a car accident, but the deliberate cruelty of someone who should have protected me. The final irony is that Bethany accused me of seeking attention, and in pushing me from that wheelchair, she gave me a platform I never wanted but now use to protect others. Every person who enters Adaptive Motion, every family that learns to support rather than shame their disabled members, every policy changed because of our advocacy, these are the ripples from that violent push. To those dealing with family who question your disability, who accuse you of exaggeration or attention-seeking, who make your physical challenges about their convenience, you deserve better. Your pain is real. Your needs are valid. Your limitations are not character flaws. Sometimes the family we're born into fails us, but the family we choose can lift us higher than we ever imagined, even from a wheelchair. So here's my question for you. Have you ever faced discrimination, or disbelief about a disability, or injury from those who should support you most? Share your story in the comments below. Let's build this community together. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in facing family dysfunction around disability. Thank you for listening to my journey from victim to advocate, from broken to building others up. Remember, sometimes the worst push down becomes the strongest push forward.